How's it going, some Fire fans? Grant from Yecats Miniatures here, bringing you another episode of our unboxing and analysis. And this time we're going to be checking out House Martell's Skyreach Bowmen. So first and foremost, we're going to do the unboxing, and I'm going to come back after the unboxing to talk through the unit, through its uses, and some of the possible combos with the attachments with my good friend Jordan, aka Obyiscus, who is the Martell faction expert for the Yecats channel. A massive thank you to Wargamer.pl for sending us a box early to review for you guys, so you guys can make an informed purchase. So let's get stuck into the unboxing. So here we go, guys. From the outset, we're treated with this amazing artwork, as we always are, and it's got to actually place in the castle. But in the description of the unit, they're actually a guerrilla style unit. They actually come out of the sand dunes and stuff. So would have been nice to have seen that. 4 separate sculpts for this unit as well, which is really nice. Lots more variation going on. So let's get this lid off. I have already taken the cellophane wrap off to spare you watching me fumble around a bit. A 12-man infantry tray, as we come to expect from these units. And the cards, I won't open it now because Jordan will be joining me after the unboxing to discuss. Again, sellotape taken off, just to save you guys the pain of watching me muck about with it. So first off, we've got this very standard pose we see with most arch units. It's still extremely good. The detail is very nice. The robes are really cool. The miniature itself is very still. There's not much movement going on within it, but it's really nice with those robes going on. And obviously, it's that really nice Martell feel for the unit. And with this second miniature, we have a little bit more movement, but again, still quite a still miniature. Not much movement at all, really. This one's actually pulling out an arrow to knock and loose. All a very, very cohesive, very similar style of clothing. These miniatures are absolutely incredible, and I'm really impressed that they've managed to get like the actual pulling out of the arrow from the quiver as well. Really nice. Don't see that often. So for the third sculpt, we have an archer knocking the arrow ready to loose. It's a common pose for Simon archers, but it's good. It's really nice. It adds variation to the unit. I really like the quite solemn, battle-hardened face. The miniatures themselves are full of detail, and we can't wait to see how you guys paint these. And when you do, make sure you tag us on Instagram so we can check them out. And again, a different style of pose. It would have been nice to have seen arrow actually like knocked on the bow itself to give it a bit more variation. But it's a nice sculpt. Again, these are really brought to life by the robes. There's not much movement, but it's a painter's dream when it comes to robe painting. I really enjoy painting robes and cloth. So I'm going to leave you with a spinning shot. I'm going to jump on a call with Jordan and to discuss what these guys can offer to you budding Martell players and perhaps some of you more experienced Martell players as well. And we're back, and I'm joined by my Martell faction expert, Jordan, aka Obyiscus. How's it going, dude?
It is going well. Very exciting topic today, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, mate, finally Martell are getting their long range unit, and what a hell of a long range unit it is.
Yeah, I wish we had them in our hands here in Canada. But we're in the not lucky group that has to continue waiting, I think they recently said, I want to say January now, if not February, so we just need to keep proxying.
Sweet, okay man, sweet. Well, let's get stuck into these guys. So I'll put the card up on screen now. So they're a 6-point range unit, they're movement 6. They have the Desert Marksman long range attack profile of a 7/6/5 hitting on a 3+. And they have the close combat melee profile of daggers, which is 5/4/3 hitting on a 5+. Their armor save is 6+, and their morale is 6+. They have the Desert Marksman attack, which comes with when attacking enemies that have not activated this round, you may re-roll attack dice and the defender becomes vulnerable. Now this is huge. And then we've got Outflank just innately, which is you may hold this unit off the table in reserve instead of deploying it. At the start of the round, if you are not the first player, you may place one unit from reserve fully within short range of a friendly or flank table edge unactivated. Now you say you haven't got around to these yet, but I'm presuming that you've been running them on TTS and proxying, right?
Yeah, we don't own them, but I've been playing my, some Stormcrow Bowmen archers have been playing the role of Skyreach Bowmen for the last while.
Well, they're probably getting more play than Stormcrow Bowmen, so that's awesome. So yeah, so first of all, man, give us your first overview of this unit. For me personally, that it's the Desert Marksman thing is quite huge for them because it basically makes them ranged bolt and cutthroats, right? And I think the difference between cutthroats and Desert Marksman is you're always going to have somebody at long range that you can shoot before they've activated, whereas cutthroats have to be charging and in combat with this stuff. So yeah, so give us your quick overview of the unit.
Yeah, so quick overview, not getting into like weird synergies and stuff in faction. The unit is clearly very good. The Desert Marksman ability is probably the strongest ability on any archer in the game, in my opinion, right? Like, you have things like Lightbringers. Yeah, you have the Lightbringers who have other reasons that they're very good. Bouncing Panic is something, but essentially, as you said, ranged bolt and cutthroats or, martial training at range, as long as they haven't activated, is just a very powerful ability. I other people have done the math, and I've seen the math of, the damage output of these guys, if you're shooting unactivated units, they outperform things like Lannister crossbowmen. They don't have the Sundering, but the extra dice at max rank, and then also that vulnerable and the rerolls is just such a huge bonus. Then on top of that, their attack profile actually is quite good. Like, it degrades very well. 765 means that even if they're at last rank, 5 dice is still, better than average, and you're putting out a good amount of attacks, right? 765 is the melee profile, the new melee profile of elite, 7-point melee infantry. So having that on these long range attacks is great. Their biggest, their morale of 6 is also is pretty good, right? There's other long range units in the game we see with the morale 7 that 6 can really help. Their biggest weakness being that 6-up range, 6-up armor defense, which is a problem. Certain game modes, if you're playing honed and ready, makes it so it's a lot harder for them to sit on one of the side objectives and get shot by walls and things like that. But because their damage output's so high, even in a ranged fight against another long-range unit, even if their armor is 1 or 2 worse, they can still end up winning that fight. Especially because that morale is better than something like the 7 on Lannister crossbows. Yeah,
and as you say, that attack profile, that 765 attack profile is, it's a good attack profile just on paper, but when you take into account you're re-rolling potentially, you're putting out a vulnerable potentially, that 5 dice becomes extremely powerful. And I think in a ranged fight, if you're getting that opening swords, because that's one of the main reasons to take range units, right? Is because you can always threaten that first activation swords to shoot, and if you're doing that, you're potentially getting 2 shots off of these guys with rerolls and vulnerable. It's so good, so good.
Yeah, and we'll get to it a bit more, I guess, when we start getting into some combos and synergies with them. But there's a number of different ways, especially with Martell, is to have these guys be attacking easily 2, if not 3. If you're lucky, maybe even 4 times, depending on what your opponent's doing. The 6 move isn't a huge deal a lot of the time, but for getting into range early in the game, when you have things like Cunning Ploy in the deck, that 6 move can actually make a difference. It also lets them run away further. For if someone does get into them, that melee profile is probably never being used, right? If someone's caught you in melee, you're running away, and a little bit of extra speed doesn't hurt. Arguably, the least used thing on their card is the outflank.
Yeah.
But usually I wouldn't outflank. because you don't want these guys behind. But one of the things you can do, and I have done, is, if the die has come out that I'm going to be choosing initiative, and as Martells, there's a number of times I might want to be taking second turn as first player. Then, if I'm in that situation, my opponent's choosing deployment, I'm choosing initiative order, I'm thinking in my head, I'm pretty confident I'm going to let my opponent go first turn one. You can put these guys in outflank if you're okay with them being on one side or the other, and then outflank them turn one, not to be behind the opponent, because that's just they're going to die. But what you can use is, if you were going to possibly put them along a table edge almost anyways, you can use that turn one outflank to essentially just start them further up the board, right? Not, in the enemy's deployment, not behind them, not right up in their face, but, my archer unit is now almost in shooting range already. So now your opponent needs to be a lot more careful with how they're maneuvering in that first turn, especially while the sword is open, because you might just give my bowman 1 or 2 shots into you turn one, which, if you haven't activated, it's crippling. But if you have activated, even if you have activated, most units don't want to just take 14 arrows into them, even without the rerolls invulnerable, just because weight of dice will still do damage.
Yeah, and it's very much area control, right? And this, so we see quite a bit with Martell, especially with the sand skirmishes, and these are just like another way of basically just controlling the field of battle, by potentially outflanking, as you say. It's a really good way of shifting up the ball quite early on, and people don't want to be leaving unactivated units within range of them. So there's a lot of that comes in, especially if you get the horses and move them up. But I think you are right. I think outflank is probably the least used ability on this card. But I mean, even if you take outflank off of this unit, it's still a really good 6-point unit from Martell's, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so that's Nova unit. So let's just go through a little bit on how we think it plays, and that's all the attachment combos that you may put in them. The obvious one, in fact, I'm not getting into it because you're the man with the knowledge. I'll let you get stuck into how they play and what good combos there are out there for them.
Sure. So, I guess for me, I'll go over some attachments first, then maybe get into some different combos with commanders and NCUs. So, I think the first and most obvious choice that could be a good, if you're going to put an attachment in these guys, I don't think you need to. I think they're fine without an attachment. But the first and most one that I'd reach for is Brawn. Classic. It's Brawn in a range unit is not something new, but these guys in particular love Brawn. One, being able to shoot off bags, that's an extra chance to shoot. Your opponent takes swords first, you shoot them off bows. They take bags first, you shoot them off swords, right? The ability to also, if you are taking bags with him, and you're now able to then make this archer unit 5/5 instead of 6/6, which can go a long way. 5/5 is not super durable, but it is. You do feel that difference. The 5-up morale, you're probably not going to be failing many morale tests without big penalties being added, and 5-up defense if you're in a ranged fight against another archer unit that isn't sundering. If it's sundering, it doesn't make a difference, but a non-sundering ranged unit, then now that you're saving an extra. You're on 1/3 instead of 1/6, which is a big deal. So that's my first thing. The other attachment that I have tried and like at times running with them is the Spearman Captain. So that attachment build is less leaning into the offensive power of the unit and more turning them into a bit of like a ranged support and damage unit. That now this unit, being in long of them, they're going to be shooting at you, but also throwing out those weakens to help make it so the opponent is also going to be hitting you less. One, it can help support your melee fight by weakening melee units that your guys are engaging in while providing range support. Or if you're in that shooting fight, trying to fight and outshoot another long-range archer unit, now you're weakening one of their shots, right? So you're weakening their output, you have flimsier armor, but now you're weakening their shots by weakening them while you're pumping, hopefully re-rolling dice into them. So those are the two I lean for. It's really a question of, do you want to lean more into the massive damage output that these guys can do with Brawn, or if you want to give them also a further support role that they otherwise don't do outside of area denial and providing some range support for guys in melee.
There's a combos there. Would you ever potentially maybe put a Spear Lord in there to give them that +1 rank or +1 dice?
I've seen people talking about putting the Spear Lord. I really don't like the Spear Lord in them. An extra dice per rank is nice. But for me, the value that one extra dice per rank, I feel like doesn't bring anywhere near as much value as the other two options. Their profile degrades so smoothly that I don't feel it as necessary, right? Like the Spear Lord and Skirmishers, I understand a lot more because 754 is that huge jump on that second rank. But these guys, it's not as big of a deal. Not that an extra dice isn't a big thing if you're getting these guys attacking more. But, comparing a Spear Lord to something like Brawn, right? Spear Lord, you're getting an extra dice on each rank, so maybe one extra die. With Brawn, there's a good chance that it means you're going to be shooting an extra time in a round, right? So that's minimum an extra 5 dice. So to me, it's much stronger than the Spear Lord. But people that want to do the Spear Lord, it's not a terrible idea. It's not such a counter synergistic attachment that it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and I think the thing as well, I think what you said there as well, the fact that when you use Bron and you get that extra round of shooting, it's then still forcing them to have to activate that unit, because if you're shooting ones off the bags and they're not activated, you're getting the rerolls and the vulnerable, and then obviously they then would have to really sort of think about activating that unit and getting them out of the way, unless because Bron could then shoot off the swords, or they could then activate and then shoot again. So that having another round of shooting means you're getting a lot more hits coming through. And again, it comes down to that area control, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've also seen some people talking about putting like Harmon Uller attachment or Edric in them to give them a bit of healing, and then if you are attacking an activated unit, possibly getting some rerolls back or getting highest attack dice depending on if you have the crown. I don't think those are terrible options. The healing, a little bit of healing on these guys is nice, but I think the other two options are better, and it's not a situation unless you're running 2 of these guys. I don't usually run Brawn and Skirmishers or anything, so if it's not like I'm going to be fighting over the space, unless for some reason you're at neutral attachment cap, and you can't fit that 1 point for Brawn.
Cool. Okay. Sweet. Well, that's covered. I think that you've covered the main attachment that people would be looking at. Do you think these? So, when we talk about commanders, then which commanders work best with them? If cards that work well with a unit as well?
I think this unit can really. I think this unit could probably be played with any of the commanders. There's certain commanders I think that have some better combos or just list builds that I particularly like. The first one is Oberyn. This is not going to be necessarily ranked of who likes them the most, but it's the first one that I talked about. I really like Oberyn. For quite a while, I had a list with Oberyn where I happened to have exactly 6. I had 6 points, or I guess 7 points, and I had been running dervishes with a spear captain, and these guys perfectly kind of slot into that role. Whether I keep it as the spear captain or switch to Brawn, it could go either way. So one thing, with Oberyn, these guys don't necessarily interact directly with his cards too much, other than that his cards are good at debuffing opponents. Things like exhaustion help with that ranged fight. Now if you're fighting your opponent and your opponent has your ranged opponent is at -1 to hit, well, cool. Now you're even better in that ranged fight off. The other thing is, because this unit can reliably just throw out extra vulnerables, it means that if they are shooting into a combat or into a unit that Oberyn has poisoned with his Manticore Venom, if that unit hasn't activated and are already vulnerable, this unit is just doing an extra wound off the top, which is just pushing that extra damage. So I think this unit helps fit into how I like playing Oberyn. So again, it's probably not the biggest combos. It's the first place I put them, so I wanted to bring it up first. the next commander, though, that I think has some really interesting combo play with them, especially if you bring something like Tyene possibly alongside them, is Daemon Sand. So the big thing with Daemon is Daemon has a need for vengeance, which is at the top of the round, you can make an attack with a unit, and then your opponent has to gets to make an NCU activation. So with these guys under Daemon, you can just get an attack off at the top. As long as you're in in shooting range of a unit, you can attack top of round. And because it's top of round, there's no way that unit's activated. Now, normally your opponent would then do something like take bags, or they might take swords, and that's the weakness of the card. If you combo that with something like Tyene and have poisoned, let's say, the sword, well, now your opponent's, let's say it's round 2. At the start of round 2, because these guys speed, you can easily get attack. You play a need for vengeance, you attack. Tyene's poisoned the sword. Your opponent now can block the sword, but if they block the sword, if they take the sword, they're going to get poisoned round 2, which most people don't necessarily want, and NCU to lose all abilities right at the top of round 2. But if they don't, you're going to take the sword and shoot again. They can take bags and heal, but again, then you're going to shoot again. I've had some lists where I've been playing around with this combo, where I've also had Peter in my list, which is then even that much scarier, right? If your opponent doesn't take the swords, let's say they heal 3 off of the shots you did. But now you take Peter to somewhere and, shoot off the fake swords again. And now your opponent again. So, you have this potential of, essentially getting 3 shots off before even activating the unit. It can be nasty. If the unit has brawn and they do block the swords, they still may also be taking another shot anyways, because you're going to be attacking off bags. So it just has a potential. A bit of that is you need, some people, you could say, you need for vengeance, you need to have the right card at the right time. But realistically, even without need for vengeance there, if you're poisoning sword, the unit, you're still threatening the similar types of plays with the sword. You just are missing out on that first attack off the top of the round. So that combination and just getting more attacks with them can be absolutely brutal, just because of how much damage these guys can put out. If a unit ends up, a lot of units in the game will not survive 2 or 3 shots from 3 shots from these guys will pretty reliably, I'd say, take out most units, barring any massive healing. But even 2, if this unit's undamaged, 2 attacks from them into an unactivated unit has a pretty decent chance of taking out a lot of units in the game. If you aren't a very high armor unit, it can really melt you pretty quickly. So they're pretty good. In terms of commanders that I might actually put in this unit, so the unit, Daemon, I wouldn't put Daemon and Oberyn. They'd still probably be hanging out in Royal Guard or something. I wouldn't put them in this unit. I think that's true for almost all of the Martell commanders. Most of the Martell commanders really do want to be in a melee unit. The one commander I have played around with actually living in the Bowmen themselves is Harmonaller. And the reason for this is mainly, there's 2 parts, right? His Iron Resolve gives them better, now this unit's really not going to be taking panic damage, so despite their 6-up armor, they'll survive longer, and then his reinforcements means whenever they activate, they're healing at least 1, just to keep them alive. And Harmon's happy, his abilities themselves don't really need him to be in the fight swinging in melee, so he's happy sitting back in this ranged unit and chucking out shots, keeping the range unit, the Bowman alive a bit longer, while your other melee units take advantage of the support while you're helping. The other nice thing is, because with this long range, because it's a long range unit, he can be shooting in. If he's forcing morale checks, if your opponent's passing them, he can start healing the Bowman or other units off spiteful truces, and being able to actually force morale tests on opponents without having to be engaged in melee is big. You could already do skirmishers, but being able to do it from further away is kind of nice. So he's the other one. It's not a huge combo, but if you're looking for a commander, I'd say that wants to actually is fine hanging out in these guys, then I think Harmoneller would be the best bet.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great combos you've just brought up there, and like, especially the ones with Damon Sand. Like, for me, that thematically and like from the fluff side really fits in well with the Martells. Is to not being able to know how to counter them, and there being so many different avenues that they'll get you. That really does, to me, it really does sort of show that guerrilla warfare type style. So I think they've done really well to sort of get that, capture that in the unit itself. So before we let you go, man, because just we get a quick short episode so people know, sort of understand, get your thoughts behind it. Skyreach Bowmen. So I've got two questions for you then. So the first is, are they an auto include for Martell armies now?
I think they're pretty close. Honestly, one of the issues I've been having with list building for Martells lately is I keep finding, the core units of my list end up being the same thing. It's, I have my Royal Guard, I have my Skirmishers, I have my Outriders, I have my Bowmen. I do think they do open up some interesting options for possibly an 8 activation Martell list. I haven't had a chance to explore too much yet, but I do see a world where you could possibly see things like that. I think that they're pretty close to an auto include. It's really hard to not bring them. The biggest hurdle that they have, I think, in my mind, from being just 100% an auto include, is I still wouldn't bring them in place of skirmishers. I know some people. I've seen some people talking about, maybe I'll drop the skirmishers and put Bowmen instead. I don't think it's not terrible. Personally, I don't like playing my Martells without skirmishers just because they're so versatile. They probably put out less damage than the Bowmen, but whereas the Bowmen can provide a little bit of support, they're primarily a damaging unit in zone denial, whereas the skirmishers can kind of do a little bit of everything. They can really do a lot more in terms of scoring objectives, and the mobility is a big deal. So, I think the Bowmen you'll probably bring most of the time, but it's alongside skirmishers in my mind more than anything.
I think that's just probably the best answer for most Martell players. I think is because it always feels bad when you feel like you have to take a unit, but knowing that a unit is good enough that it should be in most lists, but not that it has to be, I think is a really good position for Martell players to be in.
There is potential for some just nasty. I haven't played around with it too much yet. There is a potential for some just really nasty gunline Martells. Essentially just a list built around skirmishers and Bowmen. I can't say how good it is yet. I haven't really played around with it too much on the table yet, but I think there's some potential there, which could be pretty scary. I will say I'm sad as a Martell player, but glad for the purpose of the game that they took Overwatch away from Jockin before these guys came out.
Yeah. Cool. And my second question is: so I think you very, very almost crept into the zone I was looking at in a minute with your previous answer. But is there a world where there's an army with 2 Skyreach Bowmen in them, in the same way as we see a lot of double Lannister crossbow lists?
I think there is. I don't think it would be in the same vein as Lannister crossbows. It is possible. The double Lannister crossbows is usually more of a Lannister crossbows blasting away at you have a bit of an anvil unit that they're supporting. We don't have that. We also don't have a cheap 4-point solo or anything. Where I could see double Bowmen being the most effective is in that potential 8 activation list that I was discussing. So seeing something like double Bowmen, Outriders, and then maybe a Spearman, and then a commander in whichever 5-point offensive neutral unit you want to take. I'm not a huge Obara fan, but something like Obara in Lycian Swordsman, or maybe Ario Hota in in Cutthroat, something like that, where you have these double bowmen and the outriders providing a lot of damage and support as well, and then your commander in a 5-point unit, and then that way you're getting that 8 activations. Double bowmen, unlike double skirmishers, where the second more skirmishers you have, sometimes it can reduce their impact because they're so reliant on board zones to some extent. The bowman is just more shots, just putting out more and more damage and zone denial, right? You can avoid the bubble of one bowman, but if there's kind of a bowman on each side, or kind of more mid, like the bubble of that 12-inch range is a lot bigger and harder to avoid.
Okay, cool. Well, that's covered that. So hopefully, man, you'll get your hands on some of these soon. Obviously, this is part of the unboxing, so I've just unboxed the Skyreach Bowmen for the listeners, and they are incredible sculpts. We have just unboxed the Brotherhood banners as well. Man, these sculpts are getting better and better every single time, and it's really cool to see these units coming out looking good and actually working well on the table as well.
Yeah, they look great. I'm looking forward to getting them in my hands, painting them up, getting some nice splash of blue into my Martell army. And then, I should be once I get one in my hand, I'm going to paint one model first as fast as possible, and then get it scanned up into the TTS mod as fast as I can. Yeah,
so that's interesting. So for people that are unaware of it, you've actually painted. Is it all of it, or just it's the majority of it, at the very least, isn't it, for TTS?
I painted the entirety of the Martells for the TTS mod.
Yeah, because I remember seeing you on a Discord, just basically just blazing through the units, getting them on there. So, I mean, on behalf of the community, thanks for doing that. It makes all the games look a little bit prettier, right?
Yeah. I uploaded the ones I already had painted, and then it was like, well, I'm painting these up. I'll get them done. And then I was like, well, there's just a few characters and stuff I haven't done yet. I'll just quickly do those as well. So, I already told them, I'm like, okay, I'm calling dibs on the bowmen. The second I get them, I'll paint them up. Just so the TTS Martell army is, consistent and coherent. It would be look weird. The bowmen, who will probably be in most TTS Martell games, are in like a completely different look and scheme. So
yeah, it's So I played TTS today against a friend, and I was using the Greyjoys, and I used the Iron Victory crew, and they're still a little cardboard standee, so really nice. It makes so much of a difference to have the 3D printed or the 3D scanned in models for the armies. Cool. Okay, man. Well, cheers for your time. Cheers for coming on and talking to everyone about this awesome new unit. Yeah, we'll have to get together soon and talk through some more Martell stuff. There's some more series coming, so I'm sure we'll get you on board and get you talking all things Dawn, right?
For sure. Happy to.
Take care, man, and I'll speak to you soon.
You too. Bye.
So thanks very much to Jordan for joining me today and talking through some of these combos. He's an incredible Martell commander. He's been playing the Martell since their outset, so it's really cool to see the combinations that he's already found with this unit. And obviously, out of the box, this is already an extremely strong ranged unit. Extremely strong. I think I'll pick up myself a second box of those. But I hope you enjoyed the chat. I hope you enjoyed the unboxing. Please do leave your comments in the comment section below, and myself and Jordan will come back to you as and when we can. And please do like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us with the algorithms, helps build more of a following. Hopefully, we'll see you guys around soon. And wishing you all an incredible 2025. May your dice be full of sixes. Take care. Bye.